Hello there, everyone. So, I've been constantly having this conversation with myself in my head quite a lot recently about who is the best Sid in Final Fantasy. For those of you that probably aren't in the know, since as early as Final Fantasy II, we have had a character called Sid in every game. Basically, Sid acts usually as a party member or an NPC who will give the characters access to an airship or drive the airship for them. Some games, Sid has been a villain. I've never really been much of a fan of those particular Sids. But I wanted to finally figure out which Sid is the best. And to do that, bad boy, I got us the Sid tier list. Every Sid from Final Fantasy 2 to Final Fantasy 15. It says non-existent FF1. Now I could get into talking about the lore behind FF1 and the fact that there is a Sid involved in Final Fantasy 1. He just wasn't mentioned in the original game, but that's a video for a different day, isn't it? Let's rank these Sids. So I want to start off by first and foremost saying, while I do proudly say I have played every Final Fantasy game, that's a bit of a lie, because I have never ever played Final Fantasy 11. So I'm gonna have to put FF11 one in non-existent because I've not played it, so to me he does not exist. The Sid from Final Fantasy 12. Now, I think I've expressed my thoughts on Final Fantasy 12 one or two times, that I don't like that game in particular. I've heard that it's great and that the HD remaster, the Zodiac Age, has added a lot more to it. It's so slow starting for me that I've never really got very far into it. I have obviously got up to the point where I found out that Sid is Balthia's father. Spoiler warning, by the way, for like a 15-year-old game, but that's a thing. And that Sid is one of the villains, but I didn't enjoy his character in the slightest, so that Sid gets a D. Next up, we have Sid from Final Fantasy X. Sid from Final Fantasy X, I absolutely love his accent and his attitude. He lets himself down a bit in FF10 too, doesn't he, with the whole tourism of Zanakin thing. But I just think he's literally a great character. He's Riku's father, Yuna's uncle, and he's just a dad, isn't he? He's just a typical dad, and there's one dad to another. I have to give him at least an A ranking on that. Sid Reigns. Sid Reigns. What can I say about Sid Reigns? I didn't like FF13 the first time I played it. About this time last year, I replayed the entire game on stream and completed it, and really started to like it. And you know what? Sid Reigns is actually quite a complex character. Is Lassie, and he tries to fight his focus. He doesn't want to fulfill his focus. I think his is the same as everyone else's. Destroy Cocoon, and honestly, he's so complex. He dies trying to fight, and his boss fight was a pain in the arse. I was stuck on that for quite a while on stream. I'm going to put him down to B, just for being a cool and complex character. When it gets to the 2D artwork of them, though, I do struggle to figure out which one's which. I want to say that this might be Sid from Final Fantasy V, so we're gonna take a guess at that. Sid and Mid. They're funny characters, to be honest. They do, of course, grant you access to the airships and things like that, but they're not that involved in the plot of FF5, which is bad. FF5 does have a good story. I do stick up for FF5 quite a lot. I'd say it's an underrated and overlooked Final Fantasy game. Had the best job system, didn't it? As for this Sid, though, I'm going to put them in C ranking. FF15 Sid. I actually forgot there was an FF15 Sid for a little bit, because I think of FF15 Sid, I think of Cindy. She was basically the Sid for that game. But you know what? He's pretty badass. He was a Kingsguard for Noctis's father, and he's just your typical grumpy old man, isn't he? And I can't put Sid from 10 up on A for being a typical dad if I'm not going to put this guy up on A for being a typical grumpy old man. I did kind of like him. Sid Garland. Sid fucking Garland. Daddy Sid. Oh, he's got some of the best quotes. Don't you even think about dying. You're too bloody useful. And, oh, the communication might not last much longer. It could cut out at any... I absolutely adore Daddy Sid, and if there is one Sid on this list that deserves the double S ranking, it's this bad boy. Next, that takes us to Final Fantasy IV Sid, and I'm spoilers now, I'm putting him straight to S ranking. FF4 Sid is amazing. The dude basically sacrifices himself and blows him up like completely and still manages to come back and help the party. He is a great guy. Terrified of his wife, absolutely terrified of his wife, but he is awesome. So he gets the S ranking. This one, I want to say, is more than likely Final Fantasy II Sid. And honestly, he did fuck all, did he? He just gave you an airship every now and then when you needed it. So, D ranking. FF6 Sid, and I've said this to a lot of people, and I've probably upset a lot of people. FF6 Sid purely exists to die and give Celeste a better character arc. When your entire premise as a character is to die to help another character's character arc, you're not great. D ranking, FF6 Sid. Sid Highwind. Sit down, shut up, and drink your goddamn tea. For me, Sid Highwind, he steals the scene of whatever he's in, whether it's Advent Children, Dirge of Cerberus, or the original. Cannot wait to see what they're going to do with this guy in the remake, honestly. Are they still going to keep him as being the sexist, abusive piece of shit that he is? Are they gonna risk doing that? Because I feel like that's a really big thing to his character arc. The thing is, back in 1997, you know, that was more acceptable. And I'm probably going to get some slack for doing this, but my cigarette smoking, foul mouthed pilot gets an S rank as well. A tricky one here, tricky one. Headmaster Sid is a bit of a jerk, isn't he? He knows that he basically raised Squall and the rest of the gang other than Renoa. You know what? He probably has some inkling as to who Squall's maternal... I was going to say maternal mother, but that's right. His birth mother and his father are, but never tells him. He never even mentions that he basically raised those children. And they lose their memories through using the Guardian Forces and stuff. Their whole premise is crazy in that game. I love it. Literally got FF8 tattooed on my body. It's one of my favourite games, but I will admit more than anyone that the plot line for it isn't the best and is weak in some points. But the fact that he is using Squall and everyone to basically kill and free his wife really doesn't sit well with me. So Headmaster Sid gets a B. FF9 Sid. I've got to be honest, I love him. The dude got himself turned into a fucking oglop because he cheated on his wife. That is amazing writing right there. And then he becomes a frog, and there's that little bit of gameplay where you play as him and you have to solve some puzzles with him. Eventually turn him back into a dude. He's a king as well, I guess. So I'm going to put him up at A. He's phenomenal. And again, with FF3 Sid, the Sids really didn't start getting character development until like FF4. So I'm going to put this guy down at D because again, he just basically exists to give you access to an airship. He's not plot relevant or anything. I'm not the biggest fan. So double S, it's Sid Garland. There was going to be no other that would make it up there. Sid Garland to me is the ultimate Sid. FF4 Sid and Sid Highwind at S. Uncle Sid, Old Man Sid, Regent Sid, A. Sid reigns and Headmaster Sid, B. FF5 Sid. Sid and Mid do have some things to do with the plot, but not a lot. And you know, there was the anime movie with Mid as one of the main characters, so yeah, that was a thing. So I'll give him a C for that. D. Balfeyr's daddy, not a fan. And the early game ones, especially 6. The fact that his entire existence is there to give Celes a better character arc, no, that's not a good reason to have a character. And obviously I don't know anything about FF11 Sid, so he's non-existent. I don't actually know who else wanted to know what my opinions of Cids were, but there they are. You now know which Cid I like in order of best to worst. And you know what? Looking back at it, looking at it, I guess we could say it goes in terms of sexual attractiveness, with Sid Garland being right at the top. What a fine piece of ass he is. Followed by FF4 Sid. Now I've ruined this for myself. Now I've completely ruined it. He's not attractive. Guess he's got a beard. That's nice. Uncle Sid? No, I'm not into Uncle Sid. Sid reigns. If I was going by sexual attractiveness, then Sid reigns is right at the top and all, isn't he? And I guess Balfeyr's daddy as well. He's kind of sexy. Sid Iwin would also be at double S tier if I was going by sexual attractiveness. But we're not doing that. That's not what we're going for. We're going by character and just how good they are. Maybe another time we'll rank them by sexual attractiveness. If you like what you see, please feel free to press that subscribe button. It really does help. My link for my Twitch is down below. I'm on Twitch Wednesday to Saturday every week, playing Final Fantasy and whatever geeky game I feel like at the time, as well as community games on a Saturday where you guys can get involved. And since this is a Final Fantasy themed video, I can end this video by saying forever walk in the light of the crystals.